Okay, we're going to be talking today about California native landscaping. I'm going to talk to you about landscape principles, the plants, and even how to install and maintain a California native landscape. So why natives? Natives give us a sense of place. California is such a unique environment, and the plants are unique to this region. So it also provides habitat preservation. And when a California landscape is designed correctly, you'll have far less maintenance and use anywhere from 60 to 90% less water. There have been a lot of misconceptions about planting native plants. Some people feel they look dead and dormant half the year. That they're firebombs. If you have a native landscape, it will immediately combust your house, that they're difficult to grow, and that many natives are too large for most yards. And we'll talk about all of these issues today because none of them are true. Let's start with a basic ecology. California is an ecological island. We have the ocean to the west, we have the mountains to the east. So it provided an area that was unique in our continent for the plants to develop over the eons. And we have a lot of, California is a unique environment. Our area is called the California Floristic Province, and we have thousands of plants that are indigenous just to our area. When the Europeans came, they negatively impacted California's delicate ecology, planting and the plants that they were familiar with, destroying environment in order for cattle ranching, and introducing many weeds, non-native plants, that sap the energy and the nutrients of our delicate native ecology. Southern California is one of the 5 Mediterranean climates in the world, and it is the driest of those Mediterranean climates. So California native plants grew together in communities. They're highly symbiotic. They like to grow together, and they're adapted to the delicate environmental conditions in our climate and in our soils, and with our water conditions. And they call these various areas plant communities, and the plants that grow are similar in those communities. And examples would be chaparral or coastal sage scrub, mixed evergreen, grasslands. There are a number of native plant communities that have these unique plants. And the plants don't grow by themselves. And this is something that's very important to remember. They're dependent on soil biology. And our plant communities are connected underground by mycorrhizae. These are fungal networks under the ground. They consist of several different types of mycorrhizae, but basically these mycorrhizae connect our plant communities together and enforce the survival rate of our native plants. Many people don't know, but mulch is a very important factor in defining our plant communities. There's organic mulch and inorganic mulch. So organic mulch, as an example here, here's bark, shredded redwood bark, dead tree leaves, anything that has been growing and expired is an organic mulch. These are examples of some of the plant communities that require organic mulch. Then there's inorganic mulch or no mulch, bare soil. And you see this in the coastal strand, the desert, along stream beds, the riparian area, or grasslands. Those are areas, again, that require inorganic mulch. And if you group these plants by the type of mulch that they require, it is a way for those plant communities to grow together and to be successful. Here's an example of where you would find the different mulch options, different types of plants, and the different plant communities that survive with those types of mulch. So when you're putting together a California native landscape, you basically want to design the gardens in a way as much as possible that emulates California's native ecology. And here's an example of a plant community growing together, thriving with the right conditions. When you design a native landscape, one of the most important design principles is that 75% of the planting should be evergreen perennial plants. These are shrubs and trees that have leaves all year round. This avoids a dead and dormant appearance, and it provides foliar color and texture to lend year-round interest in that planting. It also reduces maintenance. So the remaining 25% would be comprised of specimen plants or plants that are perennial, what we call perennial color. And if you mix the bloom cycles of the color plants, you can provide interest year round. We do have wonderful plants that grown together, you can have flowers all year round. So I'm going to go through a number of plants, and on these slides, I have icons that describe the plant requirements so that you can group plants that grow together. And one example we have here, because this is unique to our native plants and unique to the book that we put together, is mulch. So the first icon is our plants that require organic mulch. The second is they require inorganic mulch that looks like rocks or pebbles. And then the third is that it provides at least rocks around the base or fully inorganic mulch. So we group, one of the things that I want to express here and to show you is that we have plants for all kinds of situations. So we'll start with large plants and then work our way down to smaller ones. Starting with large deciduous trees, California has many. A couple of examples would include the California box elder, which has beautiful foliage. And if you have a spot where you just want leaves in the summer, it's a wonderful deciduous plant. And looking at our icons, I'll just go through these quickly. The first icon indicates that it can tolerate very compact soils. The second indicates that it will grow in clay or sand. It is frost tolerant, and it likes full sun or partial shade and inorganic mulch. So as we go through, you'll see the various icons indicating what are the preferences of those particular plants. Next is the Western sycamore. This is an extremely large tree. Excuse me, let me take a drink of water here. You don't want this anywhere near your sewer system because its roots extend out extensively. It's a riparian plant, and it's a very beautiful plant in the proper place. We have an exceptional plants like the Santa Cruz Island ironwood. This is a native to our Santa Cruz Island, It's a very beautiful, lacy, tall tree, and it is an evergreen tree. We also have our evergreen oaks, which I think are absolutely magnificent. This is an image of the leaves of the Quercus tomentella. California has many different oaks, and you can select them for a number of different characteristics. This particular one likes loose soil. And again, the oaks like the organic mulch. Smaller trees include the very beautiful Circidium Desert Museum. Now, the purple in the background, unfortunately, is background, but I'm sure that you've seen the Palo Verde. The best selection is Desert Museum, which doesn't have any spines, but it's a beautiful yellow color, and it loses its leaves. It has the green, just beautiful green branches, a nice structure for a smaller tree. And one people are not as familiar with is one called Desert Olive. Again, this is deciduous, but it's a smaller tree. If you have a patio situation where you want a tree, it's a wonderful choice. And we have many ceanothus in California. We have them everywhere from tree forms to shrub forms to even ground covers. This is one of our key plants in California are the ceanothus, which have adapted to so many different environments and forms. So the lakeside wild lilac is a tree. It has a beautiful green bark and magnificent flowers in the springtime. And it's also one of our native plants. One of the things that we like about this is that it will tolerate good drainage. Next is the Catalina cherry. A lot of people have the ficus in their landscapes, and this is California's answer to the ficus. It has beautiful shiny leaves. It's a small tree form. And it even has this lovely fruit. It is edible. However, 99% of the Catalina cherry is pit. So it would probably take 1,000 of them to make a pie if you could eat it. But it's a wonderful tree, a smaller tree in some of the smaller landscapes. Not quite as large as the lakeside lilac are larger lilacs. Ceanothus, this is Julia Phelps. It has beautiful, beautiful flowers in the summer, and it's evergreen in a landscape. So it's a wonderful choice for a landscape, large screening landscape, maybe at the edge of a property or beside a house. This is one people are not generally as familiar with. Comerostaphylos is related, is called summer holly because it blooms in the summer and then it gets beautiful red berries. It's a very slow growing plant, but a very beautiful plant in the landscape when it's blooming. And another of our large screening shrubs, if you see this, you absolutely have to stop and look. It's the flannel bush, the Fremontodendron, California glory. This is an absolutely magnificent plant. You don't want it close to where children will be playing because the leaves of this plant are have tiny little hairs that many people find irritating. But it's a gorgeous plant in the California landscape. And they're not only flowers, but there's also color. There are many Arctostaphylos in the California native plant palette. This particular one has gorgeous red leaves in the springtime. All the new growth is red. And it's a medium-sized shrub, beautiful for the land as a landscape plant. One that people are less familiar with is Dendromecon harfortii, the island bush poppy. This blooms throughout the year. It has beautiful, big gray leaves, and these really pretty poppy flowers. Long blooming, nice color contrast in the landscape. We also have many Aragoniums. These are the buckwheats. And this example is the Santa Cruz Island buckwheat. Buckwheats are great plants in the landscape where you have your larger iconic plants. These will tuck into the corners, and they hold the blossoms for a long time. The blossoms will go from the blooming color, which is this kind of pale white, then to pink, then to a rusty color. Very beautiful plant. Where we had the larger shrub size Arctostaphylos before, there's a prostrate local manzanita called the Del Mar manzanita. It was discovered on the cliffs of Del Mar. And this is a prostrate one, which means it's like it can grow as a ground cover. So it's a wonderful substitute where you don't want to have lawn, where you can have beautiful landscaping that you're not tramping through or playing in. And it's a great ground cover alternative, California native. Another great ground cover, and this is a different Arctostaphylos. You can see how different this one is from the one you saw before, is one called Caramel Sur. And again, this was found in Northern California. It has a denser foliage with smaller leaves and provides a beautiful ground cover in the landscape. One I particularly like because of its flexibility is a Baccharis, Pigeon Point. This is coyote brush. And the coyote brush can either be an upright plant or this one, which is a ground cover type plant. It grows to maybe 18 inches. It has bright, shiny green foliage. And this is one that is particularly good where you have a steep landscape because it does hold slopes quite well with the root system under the slope. And another, we have everywhere from trees to ground covers, as I said, with the Ceanothus. Thersifolius repens is a prostrate Ceanothus. Again, you can see this very dense foliage, which covers the landscape and is evergreen, requires virtually no maintenance. So let's look at some of this 25%, the perennials in the landscape. Epilobium canum has had many names. I used to like it best when it was called Zauschneria, but our geneticists are changing names of plants almost weekly now. But this is called more commonly the California fuchsia. And one of the things that's very nice about this plant is that it blooms in the late summer and fall with these gorgeous, gorgeous red blossoms at a time when you don't have a lot of other color in the landscape, when a lot of the spring spring blooming plants have died back. So California fuchsia has generally a gray foliage, I think up to about 2 feet in height. It's not a dense plant, but it can spread in the landscape and provide that autumn color. Moving back to spring color, Erigeron glaucus, or seaside daisy, is a plant that if you did have this, it will have several bloom cycles. And as you can see, it has a really very pretty purple petals with the yellow center. And this can spread in the landscape, providing a nice color accent in the spring from, I would say, from midwinter to midsummer. One of the spring flowers that we have, this is one that's a favorite with people who install native landscapes, is the penstemon. Penstemon can grow 18 up to a couple of feet high. This particular variety is Margarita Bop, and the BOP, this particular variety was found at the back of the porch of one of our native landscape or native plant nurseries. So it's become very popular in the trade. Margarita, back of porch, a foothill penstemon, requires good drainage and blooms in the spring with just this glorious, glorious foliage color, or excuse me, flower color. So that's just examples of California native landscapes. What I'm going to go into now is how you install and maintain a California native landscape. And the key to this is preparation. Preparation is really everything. This property is actually one that I own, and we're going to use it as an example. I had a pretty boring landscape to begin with, and ended up with just a delightful one in the end. Preparation is everything. The ecology of our California native landscapes is diametrically opposed to those of the tropical landscapes or plants that grow from other parts, that grow in other parts of the world. So what we really need to do is to take a step back from traditional horticulture and get our mindset into what is it required for a California native? What is the native environment that this will grow in? So preparation really is everything, and we want to emulate nature as much as possible. So you'll be removing the conventional landscape plants and lawn, with the possible exception of a couple of drought-tolerant plants or trees, removing any landscape fabric, gravel, old drip systems. People seem to like drip systems. They're not the best for natives, but they can be converted to microsprays for the natives. And installing high efficiency sprinkler heads. There's a new technology of very fine mist with the MP rotators, and I think some of the other irrigation companies are doing this. MP is microspray. Very, very fine spray on the overhead sprinklers, which wet the leaves, and essentially they moisten the mulch rather than watering the plants at the critical times in the summer when we don't have rain. The idea is to moisten the mulch, and the mulch will then connect with the mycorrhizae that are in the soil and deliver the moisture to the plants. So here's what you won't be doing. You won't be rototilling the soil. You don't want to disturb the basis of the soil unless the soil is extremely highly compacted. You will not be amending or fertilizing the soil. You want to get a clean, mean landscape. You will not be inoculating the soil unless the soil is extremely bad, and I don't think you will be in a situation where you have mine tailings unless someone has dumped things like concrete or other construction waste in the soil. And you won't be adding the strong soil polymers. These were very popular, I don't know, a dozen years ago. They don't really work. So I don't think they're as evident anymore. And this is very important. You will not be using poor quality mulch. We do want to mulch the plants for the California native landscaping, but the mulch that you get from the landfill is not appropriate for this new landscaping that you'll be working with. And will not be using drip emitters. Again, you don't want to use a drip irrigation system on a native landscape. So, getting the site prepared, here we go. We're going to be taking out any undesirable plants and weeds and the roots as much as possible. You're going to kill the lawn. You can either go through the stages of killing the lawn, but basically what you want to do is get all of that sod off of the bare earth. So here the sod has been cut about 2 inches below the surface. And you can create a compost pile with the old turf if you like, and grow vegetables with that compost. But you want to have really clear, clean soil. And by taking off the first couple of inches of the soil, it means that you're also reducing the seed bank that was in those upper couple of inches of the soil. Going to remove any other features that you're not keeping. Walkways, landscape fabric, gravel, anything that's on top of the soil. This was put in by my partner because at one point this house was pink and we had a bunch of pink flamingos, but they're migrating out of the California native landscape. And then you will rough grade the soil. Try and get any elevations, lots of plants like to grow on mounds. You want to do all of this now to rough grade it in preparation for the installation of the native plants. Then you'll install the flat work. That would include any walkways, paths, and rocks. And then finally, once you get those in, you're going to install the irrigation. You don't want to put the irrigation in first and then put a boulder on top of it and break the system. So the irrigation comes after the flat work and rocks. This is an example of a 12-inch pop-up on a swing joint. And this is an ideal installation for your irrigation. The height, the 12-inch pop-up, allows the microspray to wash off the leaves of the plants and to gently filter down to your landscape. The swing joint means that if somebody's coming along with their dog and they happen to knock the head, then you don't have to take out the entire pipeline. You can just replace the joint and allow that head to not destroy the basic irrigation format. So MP rotators with or similar on 12-inch pop-ups with the regulators and the swing joint. If you're a real fan of drip emitters, use those for conventional landscape plants, vegetables, roses, fruit trees, but not the natives. Microsprays are fine, and they're an okay way to convert existing drip systems to overhead applications for our drought-tolerant native species. So planting. This is a slope in preparation for planting. As you can see, there's a lot of space in between those plants, and no, there are no additional plants that are going in between those containers where the plants are set. We recommend planting smaller plants, 1 to 5 gallons. These are plants, I kind of compare the 1 to 5 gallon plants to teenagers. They're big enough that they are kind of established, and they're just about ready to do their growth spurt to become adults. So by using 1 to 5 gallons, generally it saves you money because you're not bringing in these huge, well-established or well-boxed plants, and they grow faster. And so you lay out the planting beforehand, and you space the plant for the final size of the plant. So pay attention to those tags that say that this plant is in adulthood will be 3 to 5 feet. And then you space your plants when you plant them to allow for that growth. And it'll save you a lot of time and a lot of work in the future, even though initially you go, oh, wait a minute, this isn't going to be nearly enough. Just kind of hold back and say, nope, I know that this plant is going to be this big and it's not going to take that long. So, what is the key to planting? This is really important. So pay attention. You need to dig a hole and stick them in. And this would be green side up. It's very important that when you dig those holes that you do not dig them too deeply. What you want to do when you dig the hole is to dig it to the level that the plant is in the pot. So I'm going to use my cursor here. So if the pot is this tall and the plant is at this point in the pot, you want to dig a hole that is this deep. That saves you a lot of time and a lot of effort rather than digging to China for each of these plants. And you want to dig the hole about twice as wide as the plant is wide. So you dig the hole and stick them in. And you don't want to amend them or fertilize them in most of the cases. Make the hole 1/2 inch to 1 inch shallower than the root ball, and then twice as wide. And then you're going to backfill with the soil that you took out of the hole. No other soil, just the soil that's native to the area where the plant is being put in. And you want then to tamp around with your feet. Greg calls it the plant dance. You put your toes near the center of the plant, and you walk around it with your toes to kind of damp it down. You can create a temporary basin to hold the initial watering. And again, I emphasize temporary because this will only be for the first couple of times that you water that plant. It is hard on slopes, and that's where they're especially useful, is to create that basin for that initial watering. Because then if you have rocks or boulders, you can see some examples of some here. You can put them right by the stem, the base of the plant. This isn't creating a fire ring around the plant. It's right by the base of the plant, and one or two will do. And what those boulders will do is they'll help keep the moisture in, and they'll keep a more even temperature on the root base of the plant. Just a little assistance for them while they're getting established. Then you water, and this is extremely important. This is the next most important thing that you can do. And this will be the most important watering you will ever do with your landscape. 1 to 5 gallons in clay soil, and anywhere from 5 to 30 gallons in a well-draining soil. Per 1 gallon plant, and it's that day. And as soon as possible after you planted your plant, you want to put so much water on that plant it almost seems like it's going to float out of the hole. So this watering, not only does it water the plant, it also removes the air pockets and it settles the soil around the roots of the plant, because the plant, if there are air pockets, those will disturb the roots, and it will diminish the plant's ability to establish itself in that place. So water the very first day, as soon as possible after you get those plants in, and you're well on your way to your new landscape. If you have a large area and you know that there have been a lot of weeds in the area, perhaps it wasn't sod, their seeds, you might want to put down a granular pre-emergent. We do not recommend very many chemicals in native plants, but what the pre-emergent does is it keeps that seed bank from sprouting. It isn't something that goes into the soil and stays there forever and ever. But in an area that hasn't been planted, that shallow seed bank may include as many as 10 to 100,000 seeds per square foot. So this application of the pre-emergent will eliminate a lot of the weeding that you'll need to do while your plants are getting established. Mulch. As I mentioned before, these are California native plants like mulch, the right kind of mulch for the right plant communities. This is an example of what we call shredded redwood bark. And it's a byproduct from the lumber industry. It used to be thrown away. Now it is the most expensive mulch that you can buy. But what you've saved by buying 1 to 5 gallon plants, you really should invest in this shredded redwood bark. And you need to apply it 3 to 4 inches deep. It emulates the natural duff layer. It lasts up to 10 years on the ground. It does hold its color well, but eventually it'll look like more like the soil color than this kind of red color. And it sticks to very steep slopes because it's shredded. It's not cut like a lot of the mulch is. It's actually shredded, and these fibers from the shred mat together and will help to hold the slope while the plant roots are getting established. For inorganic mulch, you can use sand or rocks or pebbles. And again, I mentioned the 6 to 12 inch rocks or boulders at the root ball. And then you will settle the mulch with an overhead watering. Just by hand, you can settle the mulch. It won't be quite as dense. It'll mat the mulch down. And this also will help reduce the weeds in the landscape. So watering, California native landscapes, it's best to emulate natural rainfall patterns and quantities. Using these MP3 rotator models, the micro sprays, it acts like a summer thunderstorm or a fog drip. It doesn't mean that you're saturating the soil up down to several inches. It moistens the soil and it helps the plants to grow. New plantings will require more frequent watering than established plantings. Established plantings, the mycorrhiza, again, will be connecting those plant communities and will require less frequent watering. And with global warming, we may need to water more frequently at shorter run times to deliver the same amount of water. The interesting thing about these microspray irrigation systems is that they actually, for the same amount of time that they're run, they emit slightly less water than running a drip system an equal amount of time. So maintenance, pruning. If these evergreen plants are spaced to their final size, their ultimate size, they really will require very little pruning unless you want to prune to shape. Plants like sages and perennials usually require the removal of the dead flowers. This is deadheading, and it depends on the plant. Something like the seaside daisy, if you want that continual bloom cycle, you'll have to deadhead it more often. Sages, generally, you'll only need to prune maybe once a year. You can prune to shape or to remove dead branches or to thin. But again, this is more visual than structural for the plants. And then there's pest control. I've been very lucky. I don't have any gophers, although I do have squirrels. And they're very destructive. We do not recommend plant cages. Some people plant their plants in plant cages, but that's not very good for the health of the plant. Traps are a better solution. The black hole traps apparently are very effective. And if you're lucky enough to have a gopher kitty, that's another way that you can take care or maintain your landscape. Weeds. Definition of weeds that we have are that they are non-natives. They're highly invasive plants. They're adept at shutting down the delicate native ecology and taking over. What happens with weeds is they grow, they They grow early in the season, they take up the nutrients, and they don't give the nutrients back to the landscape. So the weeds and the native plants are essentially an ecological switch. And some weeds, particularly the weeds in the mustard family, actively target the mycorrhizal fungi and destroy it. So what you see in this photo is our mustard, which came with the friars, with the Spanish, and are ubiquitous in our California landscapes. But actually, the only things that are really living in this landscape are the weeds. So removing the weeds can often restore the health of a native ecosystem. And this is an oak tree, actually 2 oak trees. You can see one in the foreground and one in the background. Same time of year. The grass and weeds have been removed from the tree in the foreground, and the kind of yellowish tinge that you see is actually the oak tree is blooming. And you can definitely see the difference in the health between the 2 trees. So if you have a smaller landscape, I pull a lot of weeds, but often that will encourage more weeds because of the disturbance of the environment. Pre and post emergence are effective controls. I know that Roundup is a tremendous issue in our environment now, but a strategic application once can reduce that weed bank so that afterward it is easier to control until the natives take over the landscape and reduce the weeds and have that opportunity to become a native landscape. The other issue in pest control, this is an example of sucking insects, which have been killing a lot of our native plants. This is the root of a ceanothus. It's covered with scale. But the reason it's covered with scale is because of an invasive insect called Argentine ants. If you see these ants, they can be a tremendous problem, particularly for a native landscape. And the best way to control these ants is with a bait that allows, because the ants are actually farming the scale on the roots of the plant. And quite often you really will not notice this until the plant is dead, because it's all underground. Ants love to plant weeds. If you see weeds, they're very often vectored by plants. And these are particularly these Argentine ants. So these are just some of the weeds that if you notice them, you probably have Argentine ants. And this is just an example. You can actually see the trails of the Ehrhardia that the plants, they eat the stem of the seed of the plant and then drop the seeds along their trails. And they have killed this Ray Hartman ceanothus. So this is just what you might notice, just evidence of an ant infestation. So how do we get rid of the ants? First, you target the queens rather than the workers. Most of the ant baits that are in the commercial market target the workers. But the reason you want to get to the queens is because they can live up to 15 years and the workers only live about a month or so. And the queens pump out hundreds of babies a month. So there can be 8 queens for every 1,000 workers. These ants really love to multiply. So the best way to eliminate ant colonies is to use dilute bait systems. And these are probably 1/10 of the strength of the systems that you find on the shelf of Home Depot. These are a couple of the products that we have found, not to promote them specifically, except that these work. Advion has a couple of different products. One is the bait station, which includes, it's kind of a peanut butter base with borax, and boron is the main thing that is effective in ant treatment. It's non-toxic, but the bait stations also preclude any pets or anyone or children getting it. And the ants, the worker ants, will take the bait down to the nest of the nest and kill the queen. This is a plant that's on its way out as a result of native ants, and you can use more extreme measures with major insecticides to kill the ants. However, timing is very important. This is only in a desperate measure, and you want to time it so that it avoids the pollinators. There's a lot of issues now with the neonicotinoids and pyrethroids destroying the bee populations. So that's my conclusion.